Okay, well, I already said this kind of, but
Okay.
women don't get to do shit in the Bible. Nothing.
Okay. You say that why?
Because there are more books of the Bible named after dudes than there are women.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have fathers of our faith, not mothers.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
No women wrote any of the books of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them don't even get named. And all they ever did was have children.
Okay.
And be wives.
Right.
It would be like Noah and Noah's wife. Who cares? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
sure.
that
sure.
woman that sat around and said, are you done yet?
Starting to sprinkle,
Yeah.
but we can finish this thing up.
Right. So, yeah. Eve was just naked and then had babies and screwed everyone else over forever. Abraham had a wife. She had babies when she got old.
Right.
Pharaoh's wife was a slut that tried to sleep with Joseph.
Okay, not Pharaoh's wife, Potiphar's wife.
Potiphar's wife. Okay,
yeah,
never mind.
Potiphar's wife.
All right, see, that's how little we talk about women in the Bible. Noah's wife had babies, sat there. Esther married a rich guy, had babies. Ruth, I don't know anything about Ruth. Nobody ever talks about Ruth. The Virgin Mary had a baby and then watched him die, and Mary Magdalene watched the other Mary's baby die, and that's all the women I could think of in the whole Bible.
Wow.
Because, yeah.
Okay. So I think, and this is kind of part of it playing out, is the fact that you're like, that's all the women I know.
Am I false in my generalization of these things?
You're not false in the generalization that most of the Bible is about men.
Okay.
I mean, sure. Like,
okay.
Again, I'm not, no one can deny that.
So why would any woman care about the Bible if they don't get to do anything in it?
Okay. So I don't think that's fair that they don't get to quote unquote do anything in it.
All right.
So, I mean, you have
hardly anything.
Okay. So you have individuals like Deborah, who was actually a judge and actually ruled over, like was a ruler in position of rulership over Israel.
No one knows who that is.
There was, you mentioned Esther.
Mm-hmm.
Esther didn't like marry a rich dude. She married the king of Persia.
He was probably rich.
Well, yeah, he was rich.
Kings were rich.
Yeah, okay. So, but it wasn't just some random dude.
Okay.
But she was put in a horrible situation.
Mm-hmm.
She was pretty much forced to marry him.
Typical.
And if she had not been chosen as his wife, she would have been chosen or been a concubine.
Okay.
So it wasn't a great situation for her.
We'll get to thems later.
Right. But God actually used Esther to save the Jewish people.
Mm-hmm.
So much so that there's actually a whole festival and feast that is in honor of Esther and what she did. That's still held by the Jewish people today.
Oh.
So it's a pretty big deal.
We don't do that one.
As Christians,
mm-hmm.
Yeah, we don't really talk about it a lot.
Right.
We probably should.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we probably should. There's,
proving my point.
and yes, Mary, the mother of Jesus. Seems like the only time we talk about her is Christmas,
right?
Because she's about to get pregnant, or is about to have birth.
Cleaned up Jesus after he was died.
Right.
Whatever.
Yeah, and we don't talk about the fact that she was present there in everything. And if it wasn't for her, she was the one who basically talked him into doing his first miracle.
Right.
Of turning water to wine.
Yeah, because she was she was a drunk.
No, she was not a drunk. She just
Jesus. Why? Why the hell are we here? We don't even know these people. I need some wine, Jesus.
Okay, so that's a terrible take on the whole situation.
Is it?
Yes.
All right, well, that's how it reads.
No, it doesn't. We need to start reading the Bible together, I guess. All right. So
that's why we're doing this.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
And
All right.
for entertainment.
And for entertainment purposes. All right. So Mary was their first miracle, and we find her there throughout the rest of the Gospels. Okay.
Mhm.
So there's women in the Gospels beyond just, mom. And so you mentioned Mary Magdalene. There's Mary and Martha of Bethany. And so you probably never heard of those.
Bethany. I know Bethany, but I don't know what she did or why.
That was a town.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. So your knowledge of Scripture of women in Scripture is.
There was a Bethany somewhere else, right? Isn't there a Bethany somewhere else?
Just a
city?
town. Just Yep, it's very important, but whatever. Okay. Close to Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's women that's mentioned.
Whoops.
There's women that are mentioned in the Gospels that are actually helping to finance the ministry of Jesus and the disciples. Same thing in Acts. You see women do the same thing, and then we also know that there's women that are, highly esteemed by Paul, that also serve as hosting the house churches there in their homes. And so they're mentioned throughout Paul's letters. Philip's got 7 daughters. They're all prophetesses. So they're all prophesying for the Lord.
Prophetesses?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're all prophesying for the Lord. And Paul, actually in 1 Corinthians 11, has it says, when speaking to women, when you prophesy ... In other words, when you're speaking for the Lord in the gathered assembly,
mm-hmm.
That's a huge move culturally, because now we're allowing women to speak in the midst of the assembly, and not just speak in general, but actually speak for the Lord, to prophesy for the Lord.
Okay.
And so all I'm saying is, I'm not we could talk about Hannah, we could talk about Ruth, we could keep going.
Who's Hannah?
You don't know who Hannah is?
Nope.
Wow. So you just open up 1 Samuel, okay, and read the first couple of chapters.
Mom?
Samuel's mom.
Okay.
But it gives the background story.
And she said, "Hey, go hang out with this guy."
Yeah. And she actually, takes him to the priest, to the high priest. And
tired of dealing with you. Go hang out with him.
No, she promised to the Lord if he would grant her a son, that she would give him unto the Lord.
So she had a baby.
She had a baby,
right.
Samuel. Yes, I know. You felt that's proving your point.
And then got rid of him.
That sounds
something
terrible.
We're going to talk about later.
Yes, that sounds terrible. Okay, so my point is you're right. There's a lot of obviously there's a lot more men spoken of in the Bible. Their stories are longer. We know more about them,
and they get to do more cool stuff.
What are
like put sticks in the water and make it part so all the people can walk across.
Oh,
it.
Like Moses.
Yeah, and die for everybody and
right.
and beat all of the prophets with books in the Bible. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what's the
anyway?
All right. All right. But hold on before we move on to our question.
Okay.
All right. So again, I'm granting you the fact that absolutely the Bible, I'm not trying to defend the Bible in the sense of, it's mostly about men.
You're not trying to defend the Bible?
No. It doesn't need defending.
All right. Okay.
It doesn't need defending.
All right, cool.
It's clear for what it says.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So so obviously the women are not as important in the sense of talked about as often or as in depth as a lot of the men are, right? You're following Abraham's story for a long time. Although Sarah's intertwined in that story, it's clear that Abraham's at the forefront of that story, right? When we're reading about King David, it's about King David. And yes, some of his, his wife Michal comes into play, and we see that. But however,
his wife Michal,
yeah,
all right,
Michal, yeah, and so you see the fact that that she's there, but again, it's a small, almost like bit part compared to the larger story of David's life. And we see the same thing with Saul or with Samuel, where the men obviously are the larger, they've got the larger roles to play throughout the scripture.
Okay.
The only part where that really, like, where it pauses, and that's not the case, is in the book of Ruth, in the book of Esther, where it is centered on the women.
Okay.
And I think it's important to note that there actually are 2 books that are given to women. And I know it's 2 out of 66. I get that. But it's still the fact that in a religious text, that there are women that are written about and honored and valued. And I guess another part for me in all of this is, in the language they don't get to do anything but have babies, we're also belittling the fact that women are, like, one of the things that, when going back to the curse, right? That one of the things that for a woman was to be of high value was the fact that she was able to have children.
Okay.
And I think somehow in our culture today, we've almost like twisted it to the point of like, well, it's almost an inconvenience that I have to have a child. It halts my career. Those kind of things. And for me, and I know we're not getting into this today, but for me, that's like taking, the idea of feminism too far, and actually taking away from one of the great values and honors that we should, like, we got Mother's Day coming up here in May, and a lot of us will honor our moms during that and think, but like that really should be like an honorable thing, in the same way it should be honorable that men work, but then that's gotten all jacked up too. And now you've got men that are workaholics and all that kind of stuff. And so, or because it seems to be too hard, they just don't work. Like, it can go either way. And so I think that what I'm saying is the way that for men, like working in the Garden of Eden, like that was to be their role and their job, and they were to care for it. And that was an honorable thing the Lord asked them to do. And the same thing for women, the women were going to get to give birth, and that was going to be an honorable thing. And now those 2 things have become painful and more difficult. And we see that not just in the pain of childbirth, but we see that in individuals that are unable to have children and the heartbreak that causes some of them. And so, or infertility issues, like, all I'm getting to is that I think that we need to be able to not just look at the Bible and go, well, you know what? There's a lot of women that just had kids. That's all they got to do. When reality was they were trying to paint the picture that, listen, Mary got to have Joseph. Like, that was an honor, or Jesus, got to have Jesus. The child, that was an honor and a value, not just because it's the Son of God, although that's a big deal, but that was going to be mom, right? And that was mom all the way up through the cross to where Jesus is hanging on the cross, going to die. And one of the 7 last things he says is he looks at John, his disciple, and says, John, this is your mom. Mom, this is your son. And what he's saying here is, John, make sure you take care of her. And so he's valuing his mom all the way through, even to death. Like on the cross, when he's about to die, the biggest thing not the biggest thing, but one of the things that he is in his humanity that he is concerned about is making sure his mom's going to get taken care of.
So was Eve supposed to have babies in the Garden of Eden?
Yeah, absolutely.
Before the fall?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, just more people to potentially ruin everything.
Sure, if you want to look at it that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. That was, like... So
if Eve said no, it'd be like, Satan would be like, hey, have a kid. Like, if they both were like, no, I ain't doing it. Hey, have a kid, I'll try that.
No, Satan's not going to say, hey, have a kid. The Lord's already told them to have children.
Yeah, but Satan would have someone else to tempt.
Well, sure.
If Adam and Eve said no all the time.
Well, sure. And that would open up a whole lot of other hypotheticals. So
okay, great.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I hope my point's clear, just in the sense of, I do think as we look through Scripture, we do need to make sure we it is an honor, right? When we look at Jesus's, lineage in Matthew 1, for example.
So mothering all of the men that did cool stuff is an honor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's the point.
Because motherhood is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Today, women should think that that's honorable.
Right.
And men should honor women for doing it.
Right. And I'm not saying that's all that a woman is. So
right.
Right.
Okay.
But as like my wife, we have 3 children. Like that's a major deal. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not all that she is. She's not been reduced down to the fact of all she can do is have babies. Okay. But the fact that
she also makes you sandwiches.
No, but I will. My wife can really cook. I ain't gonna lie about that. My wife can throw down.
So. I had to throw that in there somewhere in the episode.
But she can really cook though.
All right.
Yeah.
Great.
It is. It's good for me.
My wife cooks.
Good.
Next question.